Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're zeroing in on a story that honestly gets overlooked way too often, the absolute vital role of Gold Beach on D-Day. We're drawing directly from some really incredible battlefield analysis by Battlefield Travels to show you how the very sand on this specific stretch of the Normandy coast literally secured the liberation of Europe. I absolutely love unpacking history like this, especially when we can use clear facts on the ground to visualize exactly how such a monumental event unfolded.
But before we hit the beaches, I want you to think about this seemingly impossible logistical nightmare. How on earth do you supply a massive invasion force if you don't have a deep-water port? Because the Allies knew for a fact that capturing a major French port right out of the gate was highly unlikely. Keep this question in the back of your mind as we go, because it's planting the seed for a brilliant engineering payoff a little later on.
Here is our flight path for today. 1. The strategic linchpin. 2. The Atlantic Wall defenses. 3. Assault on Gold Beach. 4. Breaking the German lines. And 5. Securing the Allied foothold.
All right, let's start with Section 1, the strategic linchpin. Think of Gold Beach as the literal hinge of the entire Allied assault. It was right smack in the middle. You've got the Americans landing at Omaha Beach to the west and the Canadians landing at Juno Beach to the east. So, failing to secure Gold Beach, that meant the Allied front line would be completely dangerously fractured. They desperately needed this lateral connection. Without it, the US and Canadian forces would just be isolated on either flank, entirely vulnerable to being wiped out piece by piece.
Moving right along to Section 2, the Atlantic Wall defenses.
So what exactly were the Allied landing craft sailing into? Well, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel didn't make it easy. He designed these obstacle belts to be insanely aggressive. It was a sheer, layered complexity of defense. We're talking Belgian gates and steel hedgehogs specifically meant to tear the bottoms right out of the landing craft. Tetrahedra and buried mines hidden under the tidal sand. Angled log stakes topped with explosives rigged to detonate the second the tide rolled in. And behind all of that, concrete enfilade bunkers positioned to sweep the length of the beach with crossfire rather than just shooting straight out. It was a literal funnel of death designed to trap attackers in these brutal choke points before their boots even touched dry sand.
And here's a look at who was actually fighting who on June 6th. The Allies sent in the British 50th Northumbrian Infantry Division. These guys were tough, combat-hardened veterans from North Africa and Sicily, and crucially, they brought specialized armor with them. Defending the coast, you had the German 716th Static Infantry Division, which was mostly older conscripts and troops from occupied territories. But they were backed up inland by the 352nd Infantry Division, which was a highly capable mobile reserve.
That brings us to Section 3, Assault on Gold Beach. The pacing of this morning is just wild. It was relentlessly rapid. At 05:30, the massive naval bombardment kicked off, but by 07:25, which was H hour, the assault landings were already starting. The whole operation had to pivot incredibly fast from this massive, long-range naval bombardment right into intense, close-quarters infantry combat on the tidal flats. By mid-morning, they were breaching the seawalls, and by that evening, they were already advancing inland. But to really grasp what this felt like on the ground, let's zoom in on Jig's sector, over on the western flank of Gold Beach. Right near the village of Les Hamel, the 1st Battalion of the Hampshire Regiment ran into an absolute nightmare. They were staring down a massive 75mm gun tucked inside German casemate WN-38. Because of the terrain there, you only had this one narrow seawall exit, and that bunker had it perfectly zeroed in. The infantry was just pinned down on the sand, taking heavy casualties, and completely forced into this brutal micro-terrain battle against fortified concrete. And here is where a real game-changer comes in. The crucial turning point happened thanks to AVREs, or Armored Vehicle Royal Engineers. These were not your standard tanks, at all. They were specially equipped with petard mortars designed to literally blast open massive concrete seawalls, and they had these heavy flails attached to beat the ground and safely detonate the minefields. It was these highly specialized vehicles that systematically broke the seawall choke points at places like La Hamel and La Rivière, ultimately saving the infantry from being completely trapped on the sand.
Now on to Section 4, breaking the German lines.
So, standard German military doctrine at the time was all about the rapid mobile counterattack. But that playbook completely collapsed here due to some critical compounding frictions. First off, the intense Allied bombardment totally severed their field telephone lines, so communications were a mess. Second, higher command actually delayed releasing their heavy panzer reserves. By the time they finally got the green light to move, it was just too late. You add in a fragmented infantry that was spread way too thin, plus overwhelming Allied air superiority and naval gunfire smashing basically any column that tried to move, and the entire German counterattack just fell apart. While the Germans are dealing with all that chaos, the British are pulling off this incredible logistical feat right on the sand. The Royal Engineers are out there literally clearing lanes through minefields under continuous sniper and mortar fire. At the same time, beach groups are setting up traffic control points right there on the beach to manage the endless flow of landing craft and supplies. This allowed follow-on forces like the 151st Brigade to push inland. I mean, they transformed a bloody, chaotic combat zone into a functioning traffic artery in just a matter of hours. Absolutely mind-blowing.
Let's wrap up with Section 5, securing the Allied foothold.
Let's zoom back out to the big picture. By the very next morning, June 7th, the 69th Infantry Brigade pushed inland and liberated the town of Bayeux. And crucially, they captured it completely intact. They moved so fast that the Germans actually withdrew just to avoid being surrounded. Bayeux became the very first major French town liberated in Normandy. Obviously, that's a huge morale boost, but tactically, it secured a vital road network and communications hub for the Allies.
Now, remember that impossible question we started with? How do you supply this whole invasion? The answer was Mulberry B. Because the 231st Brigade secured the town of Arromanches right on Gold Beach, the Allies were able to build this absolute engineering marvel. It was a massive prefabricated artificial harbor. They towed these gigantic concrete phoenix caissons all the way across the English Channel and pieced them together offshore, complete with floating roadways. At its absolute peak, this harbor handled a staggering 18,000 tons of supplies every single day. It single-handedly sustained the Allied logistical momentum.
Looking at the final scorecard for the 50th Northumbrian Division, it's pretty incredible. Secure Arromanches for the Mulberry Harbor? Achieved. Link up laterally with Omaha and Juneau? Achieved. Capture the road hub at Bay? Achieved. They systematically, efficiently ticked off every single strategic objective assigned to them for D-Day.
But of course, we absolutely have to ground this strategic victory in the human cost. 22,442. That massive figure represents the names etched on the British Normandy Memorial today in Vers-sur-Mer, which is just behind Gold Beach. It's a really sobering reminder of the servicemen and women under British command who made the ultimate sacrifice on D-Day and during the subsequent Battle of Normandy.
What's amazing is that history is still so visible there. If you visit Arromanches today, you can look out over the English Channel and literally see the massive concrete ghosts of the Mulberry B harbor resting in the water. They form this broken arc across the bay, a permanent physical testament to that vital logistical lifeline built right off the sand of Gold Beach.
So, wrapping up this explainer, I want to leave you with this one provocative thought. If that specialized AVRE armor at Gold Beach had failed to break those concrete seawalls and the infantry remained pinned under Rommel's guns, could the artificial harbor at Arromanches have been built in time? Honestly, without the sheer grit of those engineers and infantrymen opening the hinge at Gold Beach, it's entirely possible the whole liberation of Europe might have starved right there on the sand. Thanks so much for joining me to explore this fascinating piece of history, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.